Before we get this started, this retrospective comes with a big disclaimer. My video will be using the hard I word. It's okay. I can confirm that I've been given explicit permission from Fumito Ueda to pronounce ICO using the correct and true pronunciation, ICO. He told me that in his private life, he uses the hard I all the time. It's even his favorite word to use. He also gave me, his best friend, a pass to use it anytime I want. He personally had to stop using it in public in fear of criticism coming from white Japanese people on the internet. That's what he told me. Anyways, here's my pass. Sit back and relax, knowing that everything is okay. I have a confession to make. I never liked this game. When I had first played a demo of ICO back in 2001, I was not used to this hands-off approach to game design. Everything was open-ended, there were no tutorials, had no clue what was going on in the story. I thought ICO looked dumb, and he jumped like he was being kicked in the ass by a ghost. The entire game comprised of one long escort mission, and that wasn't appealing to me in the slightest. The combat was clunk, and the shadow creatures had unfair advantages. They'd always gang up on you and fly away with Ueda. I could not understand who would like this kind of frustrating game design. The overall feeling was just creepy. You just run around these wide open rooms with no music to accompany you. All you hear is the ambient noise of air circulating through the room. I was a broke teenager, and if I was gonna spend my money on a game where all you do is swing around a wooden plank, it surely wasn't gonna be spent on ICO. That money was going to Silent Hill 2. Now, a couple of years after ICO released, I worked at a GameStop, and one of my duties was alphabetizing the games in the store. I vividly remember when I would get to the I section in the PS2 games, I would always pause and glance at the ugly ass box art and cringe, wondering who in their right mind would buy a game with this constipated troll on the box. There was a stigma about this game that carried with me throughout the years, and that lasted up until the launch of Shadow of the Colossus. My friend Mark told me that Shadow of the Colossus was created by the guys who made ICO, and I instantly lost all interest in playing it. I just kept associating it with that goddamn horned abomination with a dump in his pants box art. Eventually, Mark changed my mind about Shadow of the Colossus, and my life has never been the same. Later on, as an adult, when I was collecting PS2 games, I just so happened to pick up a copy of ICO. And the first fucking thing I did was find a custom box art online, print it off, and covered up that face. Even Fumito Ueda seemed to have a good sense of humor about the Western box art.
アメリカ版のジャケット
アメリカ版のジャケットねとかなとか、
でもね、そうはあのジャケットはどうなんだろうと思うんだけど、結果としてアメリカで一番売れて以降は売れたタイトルになったんで、そういう意味で言うとあのジャケットは正しかったのかなみたいなのは。
So, what is ICO? Well, it was the game that started it all for the team from which they derived its namesake. Originally, the concept for the game was nothing more than a CG trailer created by a young animator, Fumito Ueda, whom had never made a game of his own, but he did help animate the cutscenes for the late Kenji Ino's D and Enemy Zero. Shit, I know I got some footage of that around here somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is.
It's surprising that Enemy Zero, a game developed in just 9 months, seemingly as a side project during the turbulent development of D2, a game that wouldn't come out until 3 years later in 1999, mind you, stands up so well to this day, especially considering it came out only a few months after the original Resident Evil hit store shelves. For a game made by some ancient-ass dinosaur computers, the FMV segments of the game don't really hit that wonk factor that a lot of FMV games from the same time do, and I think that may be in part to Ueda's animating skills. Shit kinda needed to look good, considering the game is like 50% FMVs, as well as the fact that Laura doesn't speak at all in the game, aside from when you load the game, of course. If the protagonist doesn't speak, you gotta find some way to make them express themselves. Unless, of course, you're Half-Life 2, then you just make the NPCs give out these funny quips in the form of questions, and then just have them mug for the camera waiting for a response that will never fucking come. Ain't that right, Gordon?
Come on, Gordon. We don't have time to fool around. Get your suit on.
Basically, while the game visually looks like an episode of Beast Wars, shit's animated good, better than D by a country mile, and conveys what's on Laura's mind without having to directly say it to the audience. Anyways, thanks for the screen time, man. You can just tell everyone to send their death threats to my P.O. box.
After leaving Warp, Fumito worked for a month to put together a concept trailer for ICO to show to Sony. They were so impressed with what he had shown, they hired Fumito on the spot, and well, the rest is history. I never sat down to play ICO all the way through until about last week. The ICO and Shadow of the Colossus HD collection was developed by Bluepoint Games, who later went on to make their own version of Shadow of the Colossus. The HD collection touted features such as a full 1080p render of both ICO and Shadow of the Colossus, trophy support, and one of the most underrated aspects of the PS3, it was a 3D compatible game. That is, if you own the PlayStation TV. No, not that one, this one. I just so happen to own one of these bad boys. I bought it refurbished from Newegg for $100. This thing originally launched for $499 US. Anyways, I had never played a game in 3D on this thing.
Oh shit.
Here we are, ICO in 3D, and it's disappointing. Primarily because the game was never presented in an isometric fashion, and the camera is semi-fixed at best. Things don't pop out at the screen, and Bluepoint didn't add any special features to the 3D mode. Even with the intensity slider maxed out, the world feels rather flat. So you're not missing out on much. Oh, and by the way, Shadow of the Colossus is the polar opposite. The 3D is very well done here. In fact, it might be the best example of 3D on the PlayStation 3. You notice the eagle flying in the title screen, the depth of field when Wander holds up his sword, and just the absolute scale of the Colossi. Alright, enough of the preamble. Let's get into the main event. The best stories aren't told with heavy hands, but masterful strokes. Fumito Ueda and Team ICO have garnered a reputation in the games industry for making art house platformers without the pretense of a wraparound morality tale to guide them. Though their games have a haunting and unforgettable nature to them, the vagueness of their worlds, the minimalist stories, and focus on the intricacies of level design sets their games apart from other games in the platformer genre. Generally speaking, in the beginning of their games, you're front-loaded with the bulk of the plot to work with, usually by means of a cutscene or two that gets the protagonist to the gameplay as quickly as possible. ICO here plays with minimalism more so than any other Fumito Ueda game. This minimalist nature is first established with the complete lack of UI, leaving your focus reserved solely for ICO and the world around him. You don't have to pay attention to any health bars or input prompting via QTE. You just figure things out on your own, naturally. In all of Ueda's games, you're left alone in a desolate landscape with a lone partner and foes with unclear motivations on both sides of the aisle. The who you are fighting or the why won't become clear until well after you've accrued a sizable body count. The music here is subtle at best. It's reserved for the sparse amount of cutscenes, and for the most part, it's nothing but ambient nature noises. The only consistent piece of music that's heard is when the shadows are near. When you hear music, that's when you're at your most stressed. Ultimately, the story in all of Team ICO's games take a backseat to the atmosphere found within. All you're really given is that you're a boy with horns, being enshrined in some tomb as a sacrifice for his home village. During your escape, you rescue a mysterious cage girl, and some legion of shadow monsters is trying to take her back from you. The story here and the central themes are just endlessly deep. It's like the couch that acts as a save point. Well, it's kind of a lot like the shrine that Shadow Colossus, and it glows kind of like the barrels that you feed to Trico. That means something. What I admire most about Fumito's approach to design is his commitment to the death of the author. When he's interviewed, he avoids explaining the purpose or the inspiration or the meaning behind his games. From our side, we didn't have a strong intent to portray relationships as a theme of our games. We actually tried not to do that, but as a lot of people played through ICO and Shadow of the Colossus, they said, oh, these games are about building a bond. They're about trust. From my perspective, I just say, here, go ahead, play it. Then at the end, the player can come to their own conclusion about what the game is trying to tell them. I don't like to force feed themes. And that, my friends, is what sets Fumito Ueda apart from the rest of these pretentious-ass game developers. Although Ueda doesn't like to talk about his inspirations, on occasion he has cited Eric Chahi's Another World as a favorite of his when growing up. And now that I look at it, there are many parallels and subtle callbacks to Another World within ICO. For example, the hanging cage you rescue Yorda from resembles the cage Lester and Buddy are trapped in Another World. I also like to relate the relationship dynamic between Yorda and ICO to Lester and Buddy. You see, Yorda and ICO speak different languages and communicate primarily through body language, much like our human and alien counterparts. Alright, so the Escort Mission thing. People have complained about Yorda's AI just doing whatever she wants. Sometimes she knows exactly where to go when you call for her. Other times, oh god damn it, Yorda! When I first played this, I never let Yorda out of my sight, and I would always grab her by the hand in fear of letting her being taken away. The more I played, the more I learned the balance of when to keep Yorda close and when to leave her behind. It's all situational. Now, a lot of my early frustrations with ICO were caused by only being armed with this embarrassing little stick. I used to hate this, but now I kinda love it, because the weak nature of the weapon gives you a sense of desperation not felt in many games with each wild swing. There's no lock-on or dodge roll to help you navigate the battles, which means you're gonna quickly get your ass handed to you by the shadows. If you miss your shot or you don't take it in time, you leave yourself wide open. Enemies will frequently knock you down on your ass and grab Yorda to take to these little shadow portals on the field. They tend to pick a random one, usually the one that's furthest away from you, and they'll either run with her or fly her to there, which leaves you with a short window of time to get your ass to that portal to pull out Yorda from the shadow stuff before she's swallowed whole, which then activates this giant green blast, which will turn you into a shadow statue because of course it does. Then it's game over. I know what it sounds like. It sounds frustrating as hell, and it is, but to me, it's just borrowing a page page from the survival horror playbook. This wonky battle system enhances the power struggle between the enemy and you. It keeps you invested in the battles just in a much different way, as you gotta plan every strike so you don't get overwhelmed. All you got are these shitty 3-hit combos and a jump strike. None are very effective until later on when you find a sword, which then makes all the battles pretty much a cakewalk. But if it's one thing that I've learned after having played ICO several times now, it's that most of the battles are optional, and you can just run straight to these green statues with Yorda, which then she'll touch and emit lightning bolts and kill all the shadows on the field. What? This was a significant game changer for me because I used to fight every single battle, when really all you need to do is like fight 3 in the entire game. Am I alone in this? Am I the only one who stuck out these battles? Let me know. Although my younger self initially hated what the game had to offer, my present-day self finds it totally refreshing. And finally, I'm starting to understand the hype behind the people who truly love this game. Now, who would expect a game about holding hands wouldn't spend any time holding the players? They just let you go. They let you explore, and they don't bog you down with story or characters or cutscene after cutscene. Just play. Your first run of the game will be a scenic tour. You're learning the ropes and the chains, how the enemies work, where to go, what flips to switch, what torches to light, and overall how to adapt to the clunky control scheme. It ain't perfect. The jumps are weird, the turning is slow, and Yorda ate paint chips as a child. Be patient with her, okay? The second run, now things are more familiar. You're a trophy hunter, I know you are. You're cleaning up those side trophies that you missed out on the first time. You're going out of your way to unlock the hidden lightsaber, which gets fully erect when you grab Yorda's hand. I'm no stranger to boner lightsaber jokes. I welcome them in my video games. Also, all of Yorda's dialogue is now translated for you, so you can enjoy hearing her reaction of things you could have already inferred by reading the emotions on her face the first time around. Really, nothing significant is revealed through this translation. I don't even know why they bothered. It defeats the purpose of alienating the characters from each other, but what do I know? You also unlock this cool Silent Hill grain filter. Oh, and at the end, everyone gets to eat watermelon. The end. That's a good ending right there. And the third run of the game is 2 solid hours of scream running until the finish line. You think you can fucking make it to the end of the game in under 2 hours? I don't think so. I tried 3 times. Let me tell you, the most nail-biting thing in the entire game is that you have to sit through 2 cutscenes that are mandatory. One at this bridge and the other at the end of the game. So the moment you stab the Shadow Queen, it's 10 minutes of full credits and a sappy-ass song, and then you've got to scream run your way to the end of the beach and touch Yorda before they call time. I was within 2 minutes. 2 minutes! And that's after exploiting every shortcut that I saw from the speedrunners online and avoiding all the battles I could. But if you mess up just one time, it'll ruin your entire run. But it's addicting. This is where ICO truly shines. It's in this tacked on speedrun trophy that Blue Point just included in there. The only thing that would make it better is if you could just skip the final cutscene and go straight to the beach. It's pure torture, and I'm hooked. I'm gonna get that platinum trophy. I might even do it on stream. The true ICO is in the speed game. Now, before I close out this video, I should mention that shortly after the release of ICO, Fumito and his team were working on a game called Nico, which is a Japanese play on words that you would only understand if you're not holding a pass. Ni, meaning 2 or more than 1, was a title that captured the essence of the gameplay. Essentially, it was a multiplayer Shadow of the Colossus. The footage that you're seeing is of the prototype of Nico, which came game included in the HD collection. Now, according to Ueda, the game was never intended to be a direct sequel to ICO, and the prototype was made using existing assets. Because why not? It's cheaper and easier to do it that way. That was also the explanation given for all the horned riders that you see. The game would have been one of the few online multiplayer titles for the PS2, where up to 4 total players would band together to slay the beasts. Sadly, the concept died as quickly as it lived, despite it looking pretty damn good. It's a concept that I wish would have been explored further, but I could understand how adding more players to the Ueda formula might ruin the signature lonely atmosphere that he's known for. Throw in shitty 2006 PS2 netcode, and you might have yourself a recipe for disaster. That's all I have for ya. Signing off, this has been Hikiko, reminding you not to say my name using the hard I.